Spirits are high surrounding the Philadelphia Phillies if they've officially punched their ticket to the postseason and are still chasing the final playoff seeding. And while they were unable to finish the deal by sweeping the Los Angeles Dodgers, which would have been a huge help in this regard, there is still some conversation to be had about the internal decisions of this team. Most prominently, who will be taking the ball from a playoff perspective and being a part of this full rotation. We got a couple tidbits and a couple quotes that I do want to dive in as pertains to this Phillies outlook from here, and excited to talk about that a bit today. Now, it is disappointing to not finish the job and sweep the Dodgers, which would have been a huge factor from the standpoint of what the final seedings are, but the Phillies did take 2 of 3 and should feel pretty good about the outlook for how that series went down. The one takeaway, the biggest takeaway that I have from the series overall, the Dodgers are not a team that I'm as scared of as I was before this. I really think there is some truth to if you can get the starters off the mound, and they got spectacular starts. So Blake Snell right at the front of it last night, who was absolutely dealing 7 complete innings, struck out 12, 13, whatever it was. Ohtani, 5 no-hit innings the day before. The starters are unbelievable, but the bullpen is not. And if you can get those guys out of the game, I feel pretty great about the chances of the Phillies winning. But we're not worried about the Dodgers today. We got a lot more until we even know the matchups. But I did want to dive into a couple comments that have been made regarding the status of the Phillies pitching. So this article here states, according to Matt Gelb, the Phillies are, quote, leaning towards using Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, and Luzardo as the rotation. However, Luzardo has not been quite that sharp lately. He had a 2.15 ERA through the first 11 starts of the season. Since then, he's at a 5.25 ERA. He has had a 4.29 ERA this month. He looked better in his last start, but still managed to give up 4 earned runs. The Phillies are trying to clinch the top seed in the National League, but trail the Milwaukee Brewers by 2.5 in the standings through Wednesday. Luzardo may be the Phillies' best option considering how Aaron Nola has played this season, but he is far from a great one. Zack Wheeler's injury has put Luzardo in a position to start, and he wants to take the ball in the NLDS. However, Rob Thomson has yet to make a final decision on how the Phillies will approach the postseason rotation. Now, a lot to get into here. The first thing that I think is most notable, it is the factor of going with 3 lefties here, and that's probably the biggest con that you have, or the biggest pro in the team Aaron Nola camp right here. Now, to just look at what these guys have done this season, I do want to pull up a couple stats here. That Jesus Luzardo on the year overall has pitched in 31 games, has a 667 win-loss percentage there, has thrown 176.2 innings pitched, given up 16 home runs, struck out 206, and allowed just 164 ERAs, 164 hits there, a 4.08 ERA, and a 1.251 whip there. I will say, I think he's pitched pretty well of late, and the thing that I respect about Luzardo, he absolutely has some guts on the mound. That he is a guy that's going to pitch through some struggles. He's going to battle. He won't just implode. That we have kind of the Aaron Nola inning that has plagued this Phillies organization for several years to this point. It doesn't feel like that with Luzardo. That he can let up 3 runs and he's not really going to get rattled. That he's going to bear down and fight through, which I like. But we've also seen some concerns with the pitch tipping, with people picking up on what he's throwing. The struggles that he's had pitching out of the stretch, it has not been a flawless season for Jesus Luzardo, I would say, but I also can't fully ignore just how dominant he was to start the year. There was a stretch this season where I was ready to start banging the table for a Jesus Luzardo Cy Young campaign. That's how well he started the year. And I will also note, when looking at his overall statistical profile, there are a few outlier games in which he was whacked around for 10 runs, 8 runs, and if you take those out, and I know you can't just do that like that to get an accurate number, but if you were to take those out, you're feeling quite differently. So I just want to put that he had a couple bad starts that I think dilute a bit of his production. And this is a guy who's made it quite known that he wants to pitch with the bright lights on him. And as he said himself, that the article states, with how the postseason is structured, the Phillies would only need a 3-man rotation for the National League Division Series. Jesus Luzardo could find himself in the rotation for the start of the postseason, which is exactly what he wants. Quote, "It would be amazing for me," Luzardo told The Athletic's Matt Gelb. "I've always said whatever they need from me, I'll do, whether it's a bullpen or a starting job. But I feel it would be awesome to be a part of that and get the start in the postseason." And that is one thing that I do think is pretty evident by the way that he pitches. This is a guy that wants the bright lights on him. He wants to be a part of a playoff team. He wants to be a key part of a World Series contender, and he's played himself exactly into that role right here in Philadelphia. Now, the other factors in this is the non-negotiables here is that Christopher Sanchez will be on the mound for number 1. And I do think that is awesome overall here. And to pull up the exact terminology that we do have, that it says, as I pull up the next portion of this, that to nobody's surprise, Christopher Sanchez will be Phillies Game 1 starter in the playoffs. Beyond that, Rob Thomson said it depends on the matchup. He said he would not rule out using 3 lefty starters in a series. And I did want to reflect on Sanchez directly here, that we're talking about a dude that in 2022 didn't even make the Phillies postseason roster. In 2023, he was the Game 4 starter. Then last year, the Game 2 starter, and all of a sudden he's taken the ball as the true ace of this Phillies team. This dude has grown up and become a full ace right before our very eyes. That Zack Wheeler, the dude that was second in Cy Young odds, and by the way, Christopher Sanchez is the guy who's now passed him, but Zack Wheeler, who's been one of the most dominant pitchers in the past decade of baseball, he went down with a blood clot issue, and this Phillies team has not missed a beat. That Christopher Sanchez is just that guy. It is time to start talking about this dude like he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, because that's exactly what Christopher Sanchez is. You throw him on any team around the MLB, he's got a case to be their ace there. That's the level that he's pitching at, and this team is really has to give a ton of credit to what he's brought on there. Now, as far as the rest of the conversation here, where I think the Nola talks get interesting is, of course, the right-handed angle. If you're playing a team with a ton of righties, and we'll see where that matchup ends up, there's certainly an appeal to throwing him. And I think if that is the decision, if he's going to be one of your top 3 arms, you probably throw him Game 2 to break it up a little bit. But I can't sit here and be completely convinced by the version of Aaron Nola that we've seen this year. That on the season, he's only pitched 15 games this year, which is the fewest in about a decade for Nola. He's given up 17 home runs, 90 hits across those 15 games, and 81 innings pitched there. Has only struck out 84. That comes out to 10 hits per 9 innings, a 6.44 ERA, and a 1.432 whip there. Not good enough for the guy that you expected to be a lock as a part of this playoff rotation. I do think if push was to come to shove right now, if you knew the Phillies playoff seeding, the picture was painted right in front of you, and Rob Thomson has to make the call right now, I do think the top 3 starters, it does go Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, and Jesus Luzardo. I think that is the right call by Rob Thomson in the direction that he would go. Now, it is still valuable for the final 9 games that the Phillies do have, and for Aaron Nola specifically, that his start to make sure that he stays in form is going to be incredibly important there. And I do want to note the other factor here, that I don't think these guys are pushing for a chance at starting, but could absolutely being a part of the bullpen rotation. And Rob Thomson quite proud of himself when announcing the expected starters for the upcoming series, that he says the Phillies are going to do a Walker Buehler piggyback on Friday. So Taijuan Walker starting the game and Walker Buehler coming in next to him. Rob looked very thrilled at his wordplay here, as of course Walker Buehler being the guy's name, but instead Walker, rather than his first name, is going to be Taijuan Walker to start that game. So a little funny there. I like that he's having fun with it. The Walker Buehler side of things, I'm kind of can't put my finger on. That I can't shake the feeling that this dude, this specific player, was the dude that registered the last out of last year's World Series for the winners, for the Los Angeles Dodgers. That this dude has pitched in some really high leverage moments and been like a stud at the MLB level from both a starter and bullpen perspective. But he also was available for a reason. And we have to have the conversation of, is this guy legitimately cooked? Now, to give his numbers on the year for Walker Buehler, that he's pitched in 24 games, has gone 117.1 innings pitched, 22 home runs allowed, which is a lot over that stretch there, almost 1 a game, 87 strikeouts, 127 hits, a 5.29 ERA, a 1.543 whip. He is just 31 years old, and I will say, diving into his stats a little bit, like there isn't as much wear and tear on him as I kind of was under the impression or expected to be the case there. He did throw 5 innings and only allowed 1 run during his lone start with the Phillies to this point. I'm intrigued by what Walker Buehler could be. If nothing else, that is a guy with a little bit of name brand that you can carry into the bullpen and have a little bit of intimidation, that you can throw Walker Buehler out there if you are in a pinch and don't have another answer. I don't think he's going to be an arm that passes the Orion Kirkrings, although we may have to have a conversation about him soon. But the, Johan Durans, the Matt Stroms, David Robertson even has made his case for why he needs to be viewed as a consistent high leverage arm. But the point being, I do think Buehler is going to be in the mix, and I think his final, not start, but piggyback start here is going to be pretty important for how he looks. He was okay. He was fine in the first game. I did not think it was looking as convincing as the 1.80 ERA that is next to his name with the Phillies, team name in Baseball Reference. I don't think it was quite as good as that number indicates there, but he got through it. He got through 5 innings, let up 1 run, and you take that from a starting pitcher perspective. So we'll see what ultimately the decision is to come down. I do think that there are a lot more questions than answers to this point, and I think that if it was right now, the playoffs were to start today, that is your top 3. That you're talking about Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, and and Jesus Luzardo. And I will say, for a team that lost their clear-cut ace, the guy that has been their best pitcher for quite some time, one of the best free agent signings in baseball history, certainly Phillies history there, to lose that guy and not even miss a beat is really impressive. So a little hat tip to the rest of the staff for stepping up there. They got to carry that effort right there into the postseason. But do want to know, if you were Rob Thomson right now, what is that conversation you're having with Aaron Nola? Because the other point that I will note here before we sign off is I see the appeal of what Jesus Luzardo could do out of the bullpen. I don't really see that for Aaron Nola. That I think he's kind of a starter or nothing guy, and he's never pitched out of the bullpen in his career. A little more malleability with Luzardo there. I don't know. A lot of factors to get into. We'll have a clear context based on what the matchup is, but do want to hear from you guys in the comments in the meantime. So drop your thoughts below that if you're Rob Thomson, if you have the lineup card right now, what are you penciling in for those 3 games? Drop those thoughts in the comments. Appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing the subscribe on this channel here. Dropping a like on this video. I'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.